Get down on it. Oh yeah.
It's not Edwin Starr.
I can't remember who that is. That's a great question. Let's talk about it on air.
All right. Well, hey, we are on air because this
Woo!
is oh my god, we are actually on air like 30 seconds early. This is a world record, if you will. Something we were not the best at from the fan vice days, and we brought that over to us with Osimo. But hey,
Duncan, what is this we you speak of, Kimosabi? I've been cracking the being there on time every day before the show. I'm like, let's go. Let's do it on air. Let's talk about it on air. I love talking to you. Let's do it on air just because 1 minute early is so much better than 1 minute late.
yes, very, very true. We got all the buttons pushed. Send out the little Slack chat tweet hit here, and we are good because we've got another day, another dollar. Speaking of dollars, did not get that many coming back last night. We'll talk about that. Sometimes that is what happens out there in the old DFS land. We've got some heavy content today. It's oh, oops. I think I forgot to set. Oh, hockey's at 7. I've got hockey. I'm playing all the NFL slates. I'm playing basketball. I did NASCAR. And then in an hour or 2 hours, I've got the Showdown show, or 2.5 hours for NFL. And then I'm going to record the Early Bird podcast with Chris Randone. I feel like I'm Josh Engelman. I literally have my hand in every piece of content today.
Well, everyone should have a chance, to be Josh Engelman.
Oh, always fun. Always fun. All right. Well, as people are getting in here,
yesterday was really frustrating for me because we had a number of big winners. By the way, we had someone from the show tie for first place in the 100K on FanDuel. Ooh. Our old friend Rinpack finished top 10 on both sites. If you look at the winning lineup on both sites in the respective largest tournaments, every player in those lineups got an A in GPPs for me. Even Bruce Brown, who was one of the 7 mid-show updates I did. And Bradley Beal screwed the whole thing. Like, there were 28 guys I really liked, and 26 of them were outstanding. And Kitty Poole was bad, and Bradley Beal. And like I go back, and when I get stuff wrong, I try to figure out, did I screw that up? Because I screw stuff up all the time. Nobody's perfect. And so I really try to look backwards as much as I can. And so Poole, for example, I need to go back, and with all the injuries on that team, I need to take a better look and watch that game and check out Bowman's role and see how the usage is. And I imagine we get another game or two without D'Angelo Russell. So I need to understand that. And I think there's a real chance I screw that up. Obviously, we're dealing with very small data sizes of only a few games and even fewer games with guys out of the lineup. So everyone's working without a net, but I want to make sure I grab all the data I can and watch as much as I can so I know going forward how I can correctly place, Poole and Bowman and all the other shooters on that team. But Bradley Beal feels like that was just some badass luck. Like, he's, I don't have it in front of me, but Bradley Beal, I had projected for 39 minutes. But even in like a per 36, in an average matchup, dude averages somewhere around 6 assists and 5 rebounds and like a steal and a half and some fraction of blocks. So he's not like a peripherally dead player. He's not Jamal Crawfording out in there. He's getting in there and putting up a very decent line. He had, I think, 2 triple doubles last year in good matchups. One of them may have actually been against the Timberwolves. I don't know, but he had several excellent games. He had a 60-something against the Timberwolves last year. So, my projection for him was like 39 minutes, 36 real points, 56 fantasy points. And just he didn't get any peripheral. So I try to look for any reason. There was more time with Isaiah Thomas. That's a little more ball dominant. That costs you a dime or two. He was diming up some people. But in an above average matchup, I really think that was just the most random thing ever. He had 20 points and no other stats in the first. I'm sorry. He had 20 points and 3 or 4 turnovers in the first half. So let me say no other stats. And then the second half got an assist, a rebound in the third quarter, ended with 30 or 32 real points, and didn't come back in the fourth because they got blown out. So, yeah, I had a number of people give me the old FU, which is really frustrating because I felt like otherwise it was a great show. And we had a number of people win a lot of money. And again, if you just crunch the rankings and just put in all the A's for GPPs, you had as good a chance as anyone, if not better, because your pool was probably better, of taking down some serious change. Didn't happen, and some people were wicked pissed. Like, I knew that Bradley Beal forgot how to rebound or pass, and I knew that game would blow out by enough that he wouldn't play in the fourth. So a little frustrating there, but it's still, a number of people on a streak, some very number of 5-digit winners, but frustrating how that turned out at the end of the day, put mildly.
Yeah, especially with all of the different news breaking that we had, etc. That was a perfect slate where we usually do quite well in with especially with you on the shows, disseminating what's going to happen, analyzing it, breaking it down, and getting it out there. For me, in my excitement, somehow my main lineup ended up with Pascal Siakam instead of Andre Drummond. So I got swept in my cash games because everybody else was playing Drummond. I had 80% Beal, and then as we were talking, I had a bunch of guys in that night game. So when the game stacks I had with Beal as the centerpiece didn't work out, and then I realized that Moses Guthrie, or not Moses Guthrie.
Moses
Brown. Guthrie watches the show. Moses Guthrie's actually in our chat.
Moses Guthrie's in the Slack right now, probably. Shout out to baby Moses.
But yeah, so and then I was like, oh, I'll fix these, and I realized, well, I have got Skal Labissiere in darn near every lineup, so I was just like, oh, whatever, I'm going to bed. So
that worked out fine. But yeah, the Skal got 25 or whatever. Gorgie Jang again. Bruce Brown ended up being the guy in the Pistons, and I said Bruce Brown twice on the show when he was 4% owned or whatever. I had 11 questions, which were X or Teague, and I said Teague basically every time. I did a dance on Jeff Teague all day, and that worked out. Teague more than Wiggins, so little frustrating that and it's not like Beal wasn't at all owned. He was 30 plus a little on FanDuel, and I think low 20s on DraftKings, because everyone was playing lots of guys across the ball. You want to stack the game a little bit, and it's not hard to read game logs, but I really thought he'd get there, so I guess I gotta own that one. But boy, that's frustrating.
Yeah, it was. The other thing that was kind of weird is I was watching that game. I'm gonna drop my cash game article in here. You guys can check that out. Got a few tips and tricks in there for Fantasy Cruncher today, and just a couple thoughts. But when I was watching the Wizards, Bradley Beal and Isaiah Thomas look almost the same on the court. They both have the white headband.
And they have the band. Yeah.
Now, I was having trouble figuring out which was which, because I was sitting there going, I always thought Beal was like 6'7" and bigger.
No, Brad Beal's
6'3". Now, Isaiah Thomas is generously listed at 5'9" or whatever.
I was about to say, there's still the difference between you and me there between those two.
Correct. Correct. But it was close enough where I was like, is that Bradley Beal? Why is he doing so poorly? And then you could tell when it's Isaiah Thomas when he is up at the top of the key, because he moves way differently than Bradley Beal does.
Or he stands next to another human being.
Yes, but I was like, and I messaged Adam, I'm like, when did Bradley Beal shrink? I thought he was a little bit bigger. I knew he wasn't tall, but oh my God, he's like not much bigger than Iverson, it feels like. So
yeah.
There we are. But let's talk about tonight's slate. We've got a 5-gamer. We've got looks like most of the injury news has been with us here. We know that his first one, Houston, Miami, Jimmy Butler dealing with a sore foot and a bruised quad and whatever. I guess he plays 2 games and he gets dinged up, but he's
and a baby keeping him up at night. So if you're going with either up in the middle of the night changing diaper poorly rested narrative, or want to put one on the board for my son narrative, you can activate that one. I've heard both. Yep, I literally have heard both of, he's going to go out there and win it for his kid, and he's up all night breastfeeding. And I'm like, I don't think you know how, that's not how any of this works, but
no.
Yep.
So we've got him, let's see, Daniel House moving to the bench. We have Eric Gordon going to start, though he seems to have forgotten how to do anything on a basketball court. Justice Winslow continuing to be out with his sore back. Dennis Smith Jr. not with the team still. Personal reasons, there was a death in the family. We've got Elfrid Payton, who's still out with a hamstring, so we know that Frankie Nicolina is going to be starting. I have questions about Bobby Portis. I'm interested in him. He actually is going to be making the starting lineup. Rondo still out. DeJounte Murray in. That they had a 3 and 4, but he sat on one of the back-to-back, so he's in. Luka Doncic got banged in the head in that last, I think that was an overtime game. Anyway, he should be okay. I think that's most of our main stuff. Oh, Emmanuel Mudiay is still not with the team. Hamstring, and then
that's all relevant.
Oh, Maxi Kleber, that was the other guy, because I was trying to figure out, do I want Dwight Powell? Do I want Maxi Kleber? Yeah.
Maxi Kleber is a very relevant piece of news, because Maxi Kleber being out really actually changes we'll start there. Maxi Kleber being out would change 3 players pretty significant for me. It would make Boban playable. It would make Dwight Powell, great. And it would make me like some amount of Dorian Finney-Smith because the minutes will amortize up that way. It would move my minutes projection on Finney-Smith from like 24.5 to 29 at $3,200. I'm more interested in there. It means Boban is almost certainly going to get minutes into the doubles, and at minimum price, he can double in that time. That would still be nominal interest for me on Boban, and I'm a huge Boban fan, but that would make him playable. If Maxey is in, I probably don't touch Boban. And it moves Dwight Powell. Like, people are our own Josh Engelman, of whom I have great affection, is in the chat now saying that, like, Powell is one of his favorite plays. If Maxey is in, I'm hesitant. The matchup is not everything it could be, and I'm not sure the minutes are there again. They had said repeatedly, both members of the training staff and him and Carlisle said, we're going to bring him along gradually. I believe it's the exact quote. And in the last game, dealing with a number of other issues, they left him out there in the stretch, and he got all the way up to 24 minutes. If Maxey plays, I'd have him projected for less than that. I would have him at like 21. And still 3,500, and certainly a decent matchup if the pace isn't where we want it to be, but it's a decent spot. He's a fine play at 3,500. But if he's going to be popular in Maxey's, and I would come in under. If Maxey's out, then I think he gets at least that many minutes, maybe one or two more, but like, I've seen some, he played 14 and then 24. He's going to play 30 minutes tonight. I would be shocked if he played 30 minutes tonight. So I'm barring Maxi Kleber news a little. We don't need to worry too much on FanDuel. And DraftKings, I'm absolutely fine holding a spot for him in the event Maxi's out. If Maxi's in and he's still going to be wicked popular, he's a very good fantasy player, but the matchup has been a reasonably tough one for him in the past. The paces and all that. So I'm a little more dubious on Powell. Right. And Josh just said in chat he's giving Powell 24 minutes. And that's fine. If Maxey is out, I think that's a good projection. If Maxi Kleber plays, I'm going to go 21 or 22. I'd project him for a little less than a point a minute. So you're looking at, 19, 20 point projection for me with Maxi Kleber. And that's not making my socks roll up and down. Another interesting injury piece of news that's oddly relevant is Matthew Dellavedova being out still with a personal. Really helps Jordan Clarkson. And I really like Jordan Clarkson as a pivot away from what's now going to be heavily owned, probably still, people have whiplash, but Eric Gordon at the exact same price. That's the difference between Clarkson playing 23, 24 minutes and like 28, 29 minutes. We saw that in the last game, and that's due to the absence of Dellavedova. We saw it last year. His role just increases, and Dellavedova himself not being fantasy relevant. But when he comes out, I like the matchup for Clarkson and what I expect his ownership to be quite a bit. So in one GPP lineup on DraftKings, I'm probably going to run Jordan Clarkson over a popular Eric Gordon. On FanDuel, it's really hard to get away because they're different positions, and Eric Gordon's $3,900 at small forward there, and I don't think the starting or not starting is terribly relevant for him. If the minutes were going to be the same, I would prefer him not to start because it's less time alongside Harden and Westbrook. But it ends up being roughly neutral for me because starting makes the minutes a little more accountable. We'd been getting, mid 30s in minutes out of him. We saw a couple games come under that. How exactly it works in a blowout factors into it. But him starting makes his minutes total a little more secure. So if the minutes were the same, I'd rather he came off the bench. But at that price, you're really just, wondering if today's the day you can actually put the biscuit in the basket, and the position on FanDuel makes it nice.
Yeah, and that's so that was one of the things I wrote up in the Cash Building Blocks article. I said this is the risky value, and I talked about Kleber and Powell, and I said, Powell's only played 2 games, mentioned that, he didn't play very many minutes in the first one. The second one, he and Kleber only overlapped by about 3.5 minutes. So what I said is I'm setting up a rule that says I'm only going to play one of them on any given lineup, just because I don't think we're going to get there. Both of them will get there particularly in this matchup. It doesn't necessarily mean they're 100% backups for each other, but Dallas is very, very redundant. I also have a rule in there still limiting myself to just 2 of their many wings and guards, just because if DFS has a good game, is that at the expense of Seth Curry? Is it at the expense of Brunson or whomever? So Dallas is kind of a tricky team because you've got the 2 stalwarts up front, Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. Up at the top here, Eddie, we've got, of course, James Harden. We also have Russell Westbrook in there. We've got Passel of New York guys. You've got LeBron and AD. You've got Doncic. We've got a mess of guys there in Utah and LAC with the Clippers. Who is your top 3 plays of the night? I'm assuming Harden is going to come in at 1, but is it Westbrook, LeBron, AD? What do you got there for your other options at the top? And then we'll hit some game-by-game stuff here.
So we'll say you mean DraftKings, and do you want my top plays relative to their ownership or top scoring?
Top raw score, please. DraftKings is fine.
I have. I lost it for a second. Let me get back to it. I have. It's actually really tight this time. I do have James Harden on top by about 3 points, and then after that, you run into a pretty close cluster of LeBron, Westbrook, Anthony Davis, and Luka Doncic. But to technically answer your question, I have James Harden, Luka Doncic, and Russell Westbrook. I have Westbrook less than 2 points above of the guys on the Lakers. And then after that, it's a reasonably significant step off till you get to Kawhi and Kevin Love and some other guys.
But that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that Houston-Miami game should be a bit of a track meet there. Now, I want to start, I think the most relevant thing I have to say here is warning about what exactly is going to happen with the rotations in Miami. I don't know if James Johnson plays again today, but he is no longer DMP fat. He is now active, and at some point is going to take some front court minutes, which is going to mess with mostly Myers Leonard to throw a guess out there, but will affect Olynyk and Adebayo and those guys. And Dion Waiters is no longer DMP asshole. He's active. I don't think he starts, not today anyway, but I'd guess he plays today. I'm not certain on that. Again, he might be in the doghouse for a month. There has been no indicator. I'm checking in with Ira Winderman every chance I get, but I think he plays today. He's going to play sometime soon. And that's going to mess with some Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Jimmy Butler. Dragic is still lurking. So I like these guys, and this game does. I mean, both these teams are top 5, top 7 in pace, depending exactly which version of pace and which metric and how long you're judging over. But both these teams are running all day. But I would say that there should be a little more uncertainty with these Miami guys whose prices are starting to creep up a little more than we've had in the past. I still think, based on everything we know, they don't want Nunn, but you want some Nunn. He's still too cheap for what he's doing with his team. If you recall back to the first day where we were dealing with the sort of Nunn Hero, guys are missing what to do there, one of the most surprising comments was that Hero had come off the big preseason and a huge first game of the year, and people expected him to start. And Spoelstra came out and said, no, I was planning on starting Nunn next to Butler the entire time. So unless somehow Dion Waiters retakes that job, we can still count on that. But, there's a reason there to be, I think, most specifically concerned with Tyler Hero. Yeah, so just that rotation. Winslow is still out, thank God, or this was going to be a bit of a mess. I have a good bit of confidence in Adebayo now, but when everyone gets healthy for this team, your projections are going to come in largely inaccurate unless amortized by minutes, because it's going to get a bit of a mess there. They have 9 good players they're going to try to play, and several of them play several different positions, and Spoelstra a bit more consistent than Popovich, Carlisle, or other guys who will really take those multi-positional, DFS, Luka, other guys, and swing them all the hell over the place. Spoelstra tends to be a little more rigid with what positions the guys are playing, so it'll be a little more predictable, but slight, I have some concern for the Heat, and that maybe starting tonight and certainly sometime soon, you're going to see the minutes flatten on a lot of these guys. Maybe Jimmy Butler, who is dealing with a sore foot, for that reason, they're like, okay, we have, a ton of guys who can play the whole 1, 2, 3. We're going to take it easy on you. Let you come back and play 28 minutes. Why risk it? He might go out there and play 38 minutes, get into super Jimmy Butler motivated mode against, James Harden and put his thing down. I'm fine with him. I think I'm as a B in cash because there's some inherent uncertainty. Again, a lot of guys on the team there. Who's going to, Justice Winslow's out. That makes it easier. But who's going to handle the ball how much on this team between Nunn and a little bit of Hero and Butler and Dragic off the bench? And so there's just sort of a lot up in the air there. There's also still no Derek Jones. When he gets back also, this is, DM is not on the report. James Johnson is not on the report. Again, he wasn't last game. He didn't play. I'll go 60-40 against him playing again today. But, a lot of the, I guess, long story short, or long story not as long, a little concerned with exactly how this is going to shake out. Fairly confident in Nunn. I'm very confident in Adebayo. Past that, could get a little squirrely there in Miami. So when you're trying to take your Miami pieces, be judicious.
All right. Anything in particular you want to hit on Houston, or shall we? I mean, you kind of mentioned the Eric Gordon deal there. Any interest still in house, or is it just really the top two plus Capella?
I have the same interest in House. It's been a good week for me in that I gave Daniel House a AA ranking. First time ever, probably last time ever, went out there and got 30-something. That was a big pat on the back moment for me. And last night I gave Nikola Jokic a CB, which, not giving Jokic an A in GPPs is balls, and that worked out. So a bit strong of the rankings. I'm sorry, just patting my own back there. I have no good reason to bring that up at the moment, except to say, I do think minutes are a bit more of a concern for House coming off the bench. There we still have no Gerald Green. There's still, I expect him to get his time. I probably like him more in GPPs now, if you wanted to run Daniel House out there. But there's, a good bit of uncertainty. But, talking about it a bit more, I'm a fan of having Eric Gordon if you don't have Harden and Westbrook. And especially on DraftKings, there's nothing wrong with having Harden and Westbrook. You're sort of making a bid against the Lakers there when you go with that. You're sort of going, I don't think LeBron or Anthony Davis gets there. Like those being 4 of our top 5 guys we expect to really go off on the day. It's an interesting situation where I could certainly get behind picking a Maverick, picking a Laker, and picking a Rocket to run your roster. That feels like you're, saying, okay, someone in each of these pairings is going to go better. Obviously, Luke, I think, is more likely. He's got the better matchup in the backcourt with all the various guys who are going to attempt to guard him. But he just took a serious shot to the dome a couple days ago, even if he's not concussed. He got stitches. Maybe he's a little woozy. And just under any circumstances, it's not like anyone can really guard Kristaps if he decides it's a Kristaps day. And, against the Cavs, that's a pretty slow matchup. They're not going to stop him, but it's slow enough they likely both don't pay off those salaries. So I get having one of those guys. On DK, you can certainly see how Harden and Westbrook can get there. So if I was going to play both members of one of these duos, that would be the one I think I'd be most inclined towards. I got some really interesting stuff where someone was like, I'm really worried. I literally dealt with I'm really worried about LeBron today. He's been really poor against the Spurs for a number of years. Early in his career was better. But it's been really tough for the last couple of years. I'm like, for most of those years, they had a guy there who guarded the wings. His name was Kawhi Leonard. I don't know if you heard about that. That is, relevant for many of those teams, which were LeBron and nobody, and Kawhi guarding the other team's best wing player every game. That was anyway. I would try to avoid Gordon and Westbrook and Harden in the same lineup, I guess is my point. On FanDuel, for that reason, I'm a little more inclined to have Westbrook or Harden. On DraftKings, I'd be a little more inclined to have Westbrook and Harden and not Gordon. For me, my Jordan Clarkson, for example. But that's about it on the Heat. Heat and Rockets. Not particularly great spot for Adebayo. Butler back, is relevant. There's less of the offense running through him. He's still fine. He's still a fine cash game play. Prices come up when he's sitting in that 8K range. Now we're limiting the upside a little bit, but you don't want to take away from the fact that this again is going to be a very fast game. I think he's fine to play, but it's not as appealing as when he was one of my favorite guys when he's priced in the 6s and so on and so forth. And also not a particularly great spot for Capella at his price. That needs to come down a little more. So those guys fine to get in tournaments, and the rankings reflect that.
All right, let's see. Oof, this is a fun one. Sacramento and the Knicks. We talked about Frankie Ntilikina getting the starts.
All right.
I
Emac,
keep saying it wrong.
Ntilikina.
Ntilikina. Frankie. Now I know. Just call him Frankie Ntilikina.
Frankie Smokes. Yeah, that works.
Frankie and Johnny. Okay, we've got. Sorry, had to go there. RJ Barrett, 6,500, a little bit spendy, but he has been dominating the ball. Let me see here.
Nice matchup.
Yeah, it's a great matchup for him. 39, 31, 40, 36, 36, 37 are his minutes. So I think he is definitely in play. Bobby Portis getting the start. Do you like him better starting or off in more of a reserve role in that rotation? Or does it matter with Fizdale?
Starting by far. By far. There's always going to be, I'm playing on the Knicks and I'm a foul prone guy and my defense can be terrible so I can get sat on the bench. But starting by far. Fizdale will frequently just be like, oh, you were starting, you get 38 minutes. Like anyone who's not Barrett or Randall is always going to come with uncertainty here. But since he's getting the start, there's a very real chance that you get 28 minutes out of Bobby Portis. He played last game in the tough matchup. Let me get this right. Last game was Boston. I think he played 21 minutes in that game. The 3 games previous to that, he played 27 to 30. Getting him out there starting in a brilliant matchup with the Kings. I love Bobby Portis. And by extension, a little bit less Randall, who all these guys, the matchup with the Kings is particularly exceptional. For all of them, I probably prefer it for Barrett more than anyone else. But if I was to rank my level of appeal on the Knicks, it would probably be certainly Portis on top. Probably I'd go Portis, Randall, Barrett. I guess Ntilikina you have to mention at $3,100. I don't know if he plays 38 minutes again or whatever, but he's going to play 30-something minutes and he costs nothing. And he's going up against the Kings where, Ntilikina is incredibly low usage. Even that last game he had, 38 minutes and 25 fantasy points. But $3,100 is $3,100. So if he fits in at that price, I'm not going to argue against him. And then Mitch Robinson. Dude too cheap for what he could do. It's the Kings. The matchup is brilliant. He will probably play 18 minutes. But at 18 minutes in this matchup, I'd project him for 25, 26 fantasy points. The furthest thing from a cash play, but I would still definitely have some Mitch in my life. And in this matchup, you can Kevin Knox, whose price has descended into the 3s and should play 20 whatever minutes. Like, I like making sure I have some exposure to the Knicks. But Portis on top for me.
All right. How about the Dwayne Dedman, Rashawn Holmes question? And then we've got a question here from Premium Chat. Can you play Holmes in Bielitsa? God, it's going to be one of those nights. Bielitsa.
I'm going to be honest. I think you should start correctly or incorrectly pronouncing most players' names and make it your shtick. I don't think you should even try. You should be like Nemanja Bjelica. Like, just run it. It can be your shtick.
I would prefer not to. Rashawn Holmes, Nemanja Bielitsa.
No, Bielitsa.
Whatever. B-Jelly. Now,
B-Jelly. See, there you go.
I'm borrowing that one from Josh. B-Jelly. Can you play them together on FanDuel? And then if you're going with Holmes, Dedman finally had a game, but it was the first time he did this season. And Holmes really did not. Those guys are kind of binary. Which would you prefer?
I agree they're binary. You don't want to play them both. I need to look at our ownership. I have not looked at our ownership in some time. Let me get our most recent ownership because that is going to factor into a lot of things here. Frankie Ntilikina, we have at 41%. I would try to get in way under that at that point. 41% is too much for Frank Ntilikina. Cash, absolutely no problem. GPPs, again, if you have $3,100, he's going to be your best play. But I don't think you should be like, GPPs, Frankie Smokes, boom, windmill it over the shoulder. I need to look at the ownership on some of these guys. We have Randall up at higher than I would have thought, 23.5%. That's very interesting. Dwight Powell, 29. Yeah, again, I've expressed my my reticence, my reservations with regard to him. And again, if Kleber is out, I really like him. I think the minutes are secure. If he's going to be 30% owned and Kleber is in, I would try to come in under that number. I think there's because All right, the Mavericks have basically 4 guys they could very, very reasonably play at center today. They're playing against a very big team, so you may get Boban time. We only saw him last game, but that was because it was, again, a very large team. And they're not trying to run lots of Dwight Powell. They're saying we're going to bring him along gradually. So they could very possibly, if Kleber is in, play Kleber, Boban, Powell, and Porzingis at center at some point or another. I don't know. At that point, that would be enough for me to look other places. The question was, is it okay to play Rashawn Holmes and B. Jelly? Yes, it's absolutely fine to play them both, especially on DraftKings. FanDuel, you're asking for some trouble. The prices aren't quite as good. But DK, Rashawn Holmes at 51 is sublime. That's just still way too cheap. It's not 4,500 too cheap, but he should be 6 and change. So 5,100 is still well too cheap. And we have him projected at 15%. That's preposterous. That might be my favorite play of the day at this point. And you love, by the way, that they are starting Portis and not Mitch. Because Mitch is a greater foul trouble issue, a harder defensive matchup. The fact that they're now starting Portis, that Rashawn Holmes play is brilliant. So huge, probably my favorite play of the day at this point, relative to ownership, looking at what we're seeing here.
So Rabash would like to say that he says he does find it quite instructive when we talked about pairs that we should not play together. He has Porzingis and Powell paired a lot today. How do you feel about that on FanDuel? I'm fine with it. They don't really overlap.
On FanDuel, yeah. Powell is 4,000 flat. Let me look at center on FanDuel. Well, don't take a second and depart here. Again, I'm going to have a lot of trouble getting away from $5,300 Portis on FanDuel. And if I did, my next spot is probably Rudy Gobert, or as you would call him, Rudy Gobert.
I just call him the Stifle Tower, but hey.
That's good. I like that. I could see Mitch there. So again, I've expressed my reservations about Dwight Powell, and it always bothers me how much to talk about something, because it's not like he's a bad play if he plays, but if he ends up being super popular. So you have Powell and Porzingis. That wouldn't bother me at all, because one of them is so cheap. It's very rare that someone who costs under $5,000, I'm going to be like, don't play guy A and guy B. The rare exception today where I'm like, don't play Westbrook and Harden and Gordon, because Gordon's going to be popular. And if your expensive investments in Westbrook and Harden pay off, it's getting even less likely that he gets there. So there'll be a great opportunity to get away from. But very rarely will I be like, don't play, unless they're literally subbing in for each other, which is fairly rarely the case with Powell and Porzingis. So I'm fine with playing both of those guys in a lineup.
Would you pivot off of Frankie Ntilikina to Garland, nice. The offspring of Winston? Hey, there's a tobacco reference.
No, that was nice. That's really nice. That no one's gonna get it, but that was a strong reference there. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Garland, I still have at 28 minutes or so. Another guy who by extension you can be looking at getting a minute or two more off of Dellavedova being out. So yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that in a tournament. And I would rather look at some of those backcourt guys and those front court guys. So if I'm trying to take pieces of Cleveland, probably on DK at least, Clarkson is my favorite at the moment. Kevin Love has been great. And from the beginning of the year when he was way too cheap, I'm like, look, this is a bad team. And Kevin Love is still really, really good and can rebound like a monster. And we've seen some of that. He's an amazingly good rebound. He's in that, Enes Kanter school of like, this guy can grab some boards. So, the matchup is he's going to see a lot of Kristaps, who does a fairly good job against him in the past. Kristaps is underrated as a defender. There's certain things he doesn't do great, but against guys like Kevin Love, he's actually quite good. So it's not a matchup I'm thrilled with. He got the very rare C in cash. I think it's generally wrong to play Kevin Love in cash. But in tournaments, there's just still the upside of he, falls into 18 rebounds and is the best player on his team and just, goes out and puts up a monster. So we got the rare C in cash, A in GPPs. But, a little more excited about looking at some of those guys who are picking up a couple extra Dellavedova minutes and are cheap. So I'm fine in a tournament lineup with playing Garland over Frankie Smokes.
How would you compare him to Sexton, Garland, that is, on FanDuel?
I gotta check the prices on those guys. I think Sexton is like 5 on the nose, 5-1, and Darius Garland is 3,800. I would be more inclined to spend down at the value play there. Again, we don't have drop a score anymore or anything like that, but I would probably rather still stick with Garland, but it's close. I mean, neither of these guys have really been consistently paying off their prices, which is why their prices continue to decline. But Garland's been getting time, and he will put together a decent game at some point. You know, we got the very decent game from Sexton in the last game, where he put up 34, which at $5,000 is about what you're going to need to get there. But I'd probably be more inclined to play the one who costs less.
All right, we'll let Eddie get a breath there. See if there's anything else you like in that one. Otherwise, we'll move on to Lakers and San Antonio. But first, reminder of our sponsor. That would be the one and only fantasy draft, home of rake-free DFS. I'm just looking at my account now. I have now saved $52 thus far in rake. Let's put that against the 2 months of subscriptions because it just rolled over. So that's $12. And I put $200 in. So that was like $6. So we'll call that $20. I have now saved $30 as compared to what I would be playing over there on DraftKings or FanDuel. So just putting that out there. Eddie, you also made a good point last week and mentioned that if you were depositing in a losing player, but depositing for each contest you put money in, you would only be paying about 4% rake.
Yeah, I think you can't actually get to 4, but maybe you can. But this will never happen. But if you literally never won a game, your rake would be about 4%. So like if you put in $100, lost it all, put in $100, lost it all, put in $100, lost it all, you'd been paying 4% rake. If you were competent, like even if you're a slightly losing player, which is the majority of DFS players now, a lot of people, one of the frustrating things about this job is I love it and I love the people in chat. And it's really frustrating for me that if I have a great year and everything goes really well, still probably more people listening lose than win. It's just impossible to get like 50% of people winning, but you obviously try the very best you can. But if you're a slightly losing player, which is the majority of most players, you're ending up paying somewhere below 1%. Because the deposit fees are 3% or whatever, and then there's your subscription fee, which ends up amortizing out to less than 1. I'm 99% sure.
All right, Lakers, San Antonio. We've got LeBron, Anthony Davis, Aldridge, DeJounte, Rudy Gay, Derek White, Dwight Howard, the usual crew. This game has a 218 over-under. Everything's kind of clustered together with the exception of Houston, Miami. Because, hey, Miami is playing like 5th fastest pace in the league. Houston is number 1. Miami does have the 4th best defensive efficiency, but Houston also number 1, the best offensive efficiency. That's neither here nor there, but that's why they are the outlier. But LA, San Antonio, who pops out for you at this game? Would you consider both LeBron and AD on the same team, or are they you would prefer them separated?
I would prefer them separated. Again, it's a 5-game slate. There is obviously a universe where both those guys have massive games or just good enough games, and the Miami game turns into a 30-point blowout and you get what you had last night, for example, and Westbrook and Harden both end at 50 and LeBron and AD each get 60. I mean, you saw the last game where Anthony Davis had his standard 50 burger and LeBron had 90 something. If that evens out, they're both getting 65, 70. So it's not viable to play both of them, but ideally I would rather play one. Their pace is rather moribund. They're not moving that fast. Kuzma is back and he's going to play 20 something minutes. That potentially affects minutes for both of them a little bit, and certainly affects usage for both of them a little bit. He was pretty rusty, didn't do a whole lot last game, but as time goes on, that's going to bring him down a little bit. They are still, by any objective standard, way too cheap. So they can still smash the bejesus out of their prices on DraftKings. But they are less objectively cheap and less in a good spot and less likely usage monsters than, for example, the guys on Houston. So, yeah, generally I would rather play one of them. If I was going to play 100 lineups tonight, I would have, as I say that as opposed to 150 because the math's a little easier on both sides of me speaking and you listening, but I imagine on DraftKings, I would have a little more LeBron than AD just because of the pricing difference. Not a ton more. I like Anthony Davis for more raw points. But again, not a ton more. I would have a little more LeBron. I think you'd have something like, I'll go with 24 LeBron, 18 Anthony Davis, including 2 where they cross over. is around where I'd like to end up. Again, you don't always have time to min max it that much and put all that time in, but hypothetically, that's about where I'd like to end up. And in that one where you're playing both of them, obviously you'd want to look at some number of Spurs as well. I'm still fairly low on the Spurs. I heard a lot of people might being like, Aldridge chalk lock at 7,000. I'd rather play him in cash than in tournaments. It is not a good spot. It's gonna be a lot of days this year until I'm like, yeah, bigs against LA and Orlando are both teams where I generally, and I'm trying to think if I've messed this up at all yet. Someone has randomly busted out a ceiling in one of those matchups. I can't think of one. It probably exists, but there are no good matchups in the front court against those teams almost ever, even coming off the bench where you're always running into, the worst defender there is LeBron. So, I guess Kuzma now. That's fair to say, but you got JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. It's just not an area where there's a lot of room and incentive to operate. Now they're pretty good in the backcourt as well, but neither here nor there. I don't see a lot of upside for LaMarcus Aldridge. He's going to get a lot of time at center. That's nice. I haven't projected for about 35.5 fantasy points. It's a very reasonable number at 7K. But it's just really hard for me to see him going the hell off here. We're always dealing with the Popovich limitations. They are on an island game. They were on that Thursday, Friday back-to-back, but they're on an island game now. So I'm fine with you playing LaMarcus Aldridge, but there's generally just other guys I would rather play Rudy Gobert for $500 more. I'm a pretty big fan of Rudy Gobert tonight. And he was just really bad in this game against the Clippers, but he hasn't been as good as he could have been this year. I haven't seen any evidence that is much apropos of anything. Him and Conley aren't quite on the same page yet. That's relevant when you're looking at this. These two teams played, 4 or 5 days ago, and Rudy Gobert had a not great game. And that was to some degree because there were really good games on the bench. That was the only good Mike Conley game this year, really. And Donovan Mitchell had a very good game in that one. And I like all three of those players, but I think in a vacuum, Rudy Gobert can smash the bejesus out of 7,500 more frequently than LaMarcus Aldridge is going to smash his 7,000 in their respective matchups. So there's just a lot of guys I would rather, Bobby Portis at $5,000 and change. I would rather find at same position everywhere than LaMarcus Aldridge for a couple $1,000s more. Rashawn Holmes, I would have projected very similarly at $2,000 less. So it's hard for me to get there. And I think, again, I'm curious what we have his ownership at. And I like LaMarcus Aldridge as a player. But getting back to the ownership, if he's much over about 10%, I would be... Where do we have Marcus Aldridge? Yeah, 18%. Yeah, that's still too high for me. Again, I've tried to be a big fan this whole year of, a guy hasn't done it yet. He's going to do it at some point. He didn't forget how to play basketball, but it's not the spot. And every other time we've hit those nuts with Vooch and Beal and all the other guys where they were way underowned, we waited till they were in a good matchup, and this is not that. So he's just going to see a lot of Anthony Davis, who plays Aldridge very well. I don't randomly have game logs up, but if I randomly pulled up game logs between those two guys, I think you would see a below average trend out of LaMarcus Aldridge.
All right, on to our next one, Dallas, Cleveland. We've sort of hit upon it a little bit there. Anything else you want to expand upon? We've picked off the Garland. We've talked a little bit about Doncic. We've hit the Powell and the Maximilian Kleber news. Anything else you want to hit on that one before we get to the final game? We have 17 minutes.
I'll be quick then. Again, Dwight Powell's got more than his share of time. Again, if Kleber is out, I like playing Dorian Finney-Smith over Frankie Smokes, for example, in a lineup. I would then have some interest in doing that. You could then play Boban. No, let's move on for the moment. We'll cover it in questions if we missed anything. Nothing really actionable left.
All right, Utah and LAC. I believe that was the game that Kawhi sat out for load management, if I remember correctly. I think. I go look at the game log.
I thought it was one before.
Let's see his game log. It was Utah. He
It was
played the
Utah. Okay.
next night against the Spurs. So that kind of mucked up a little bit of everybody there, because that was the first time he was out. Who knows?
Yeah.
But if you were gonna play,
Oh, I forgot to mention something else, and this is
sure.
fairly important. Ed Davis is out. So if you look at the last game, you saw Rudy Gobert played some ridiculous number of minutes. I can't believe I almost forgot to mention this. But with Ed Davis out there, they're basically running Tony Bradley as backup center, and I don't think they're really comfortable giving him a pile of time. So
38 minutes for Gobert.
right. So I haven't projected for 37 right now, and that's a really relevant difference. If they have Ed Davis there, they like Ed Davis. They'll take it easy on Rudy Gobert a little bit. Having Tony Bradley having to eat real time, if this game stays close, they're going to push his minutes up a little bit too. So yeah, I like Gobert tonight.
All right. Breaking on down, Kawhi, Mitchell, Harrell had a crappy game last time. Lou Will maybe losing half a step to father time here. What else do you like amongst these players?
He's 33. It's tough to go anywhere far on the Clippers. The Utah defense has really stepped it up and is legitimate. You know, the best guy I have ranked is Kawhi Leonard at a BA because his ownership will be really low. He should maybe be a CA. Spending $9,800 on cash on he probably should be a CA. That's a misrank by me. Spending $9,800 in cash on Kawhi tonight is wrong. Yeah, it's just wrong relative to Westbrook and Harden. So that's I should have made an adjustment there. Now he's the straw that stirs the drink for this team. If you landed on him in cash, I don't think you're dreadfully wrong, but you should be on LeBron or Westbrook or Harden or Luka or just someone else in that price range more often than not. Past that, no, lots of guys got nominal rankings and got listed. It is a really tough spot for Montrezl Harrell over the last couple of years. He got a CB, but he was almost like a DC. I really like Gobert because of those extra minutes. I also, there's a similar situation going on with point guard there that all their backup point guards, a la Dante Exum and so on, are also injured on this team. So you could see a couple extra minutes out of Conley. Somewhat surprisingly, what we expected to be a fairly hardy led by Patrick Beverley backcourt has not been doing as well on defense as we expected for this Clips team. They're doing, better down low than we expected. Still a great spot, but better than I expected. And they've been a little susceptible up top and picked up a couple more early losses than I thought they would. But yeah, this was, the only decent game Mike Conley had this year. His price is still tolerable in GPPs. Donovan Mitchell is still too cheap at $7,200. I think you can roll him out in cash. He got double A's and ranks. But for the Clippers, I don't have a ton of interest. Kawhi isn't price. I mean, everything is relative to other guys. Kawhi is not priced well enough. Now, I imagine we haven't projected for like 6% or some number. I'm gonna guess is roughly the range. Let's look. Help if I went to the right webpage. Well, I haven't some. I'm guessing it is going to be a fairly nominal number on Kawhi there. We have him at 10%. I think it's actually going to end up being less than that just because all the other excellent options. But for guys on this team, I'd probably prefer Donovan Mitchell. Actually, I prefer Rudy Gobert to Donovan Mitchell to Mike Conley for the Jazz. And for the Clippers, yeah, there's not really a great reason to go there tonight. They're also just spreading minutes around a ton, and you get the JaMychal Green or the Mo Harkless or the Pat Pad or the Zubac versus Harrell. It's just, and then Shamet or Beverly or Lou or against the Jazz, you're being really cute. So I ranked a few guys who would be nominally present in lineups, but I think we're good.
All right, let's hit some questions here. Let's turn on our FanDuel caps because people would like to hear a few thoughts about FanDuel, particularly for kind of your point per dollar core plays, which could, of course, on this slate could work for cash or GPP.
Yeah, it's Eric Gordon at 3,900 on small forward does make a lot of sense. He's going to be 40 or 50% owned. Fine to swallow it. Fine to move away in tournaments. You certainly don't need me to explain that he can disappear. He's shown you that several times. I think you can play Trevor Ariza on FanDuel. He's $3,600 on FanDuel. He's done absolutely nothing this year, but he did like 30 minutes of nothing in the last game, and he's going to play the Knicks today. 32 minutes in that last game. will get some big minutes games. And this is a situation where I could see him picking up some more time there. So that's not insanity for me.
If you were pivoting away from Eric Gordon on FanDuel at small forward, who would that be? That's from Don't Embiid My Status.
It's $100 for Dorian Finney-Smith. If Kleber is out, Dorian Finney-Smith. If Kleber was in, saving $300 and playing Trevor Ariza would have some interest for me. If you have the $400, Kevin Knox is fine to play. If you have the $900, Chetty Osman is fine to play, but it's a sticky position. I will say I have some interest in Joe Ingles. If you look at the last game with Exum and more important, Moutier still out, he ends up playing some point guard, and you see some assists spike at him. I think he had 7 assists in his last game. He's 5,100 on FanDuel. Again, there's really no positions on DK, so there's not much of a reason to go there. But on FanDuel, you're picking against basically on DraftKings, you're playing every player against every other player because there's frequently no positions of relevance. On FanDuel, you're just playing against the other small forwards, and there's a lot of uncertainty here. LeBron obviously looks fine. His price isn't that great on FanDuel. Kawhi price is even worse, but Harrison Barnes can disappear. Marcus Morris can disappear. Larry Nance may not get the minutes and can certainly disappear. Bojan if he doesn't make his shot. So like small forward on FanDuel, I'd have some interest in firing a couple bullets on Joe Ingles, who is going to get more time and more importantly ends up sort of playing point guard a little bit because they have no one to back up Conley. And that's, again, another reason why I like Conley himself, who might get a couple extra minutes, Donovan Mitchell, who will play some nominal point, and Joe Ingles, again, by extension. It's a fun day where you know, Exum and Moutier and Dellavedova being out really makes some more guys actionable. You know, I don't really want to go to Rudy Gay in this spot, but it's certainly not an insanity. He's a very good defender. Rolling him out there to get some extra time on LeBron wouldn't be crazy, so he'd be in play. So no one jumps out as this is my immediate pivot. For around the same price, right now it would probably end up being Trevor Ariza if you have $3,900 and less to spend. If you have $100 and Kleber is out, Dorian Finney-Smith, and so on. But Ingles, you know, interesting for me in the context I just explained.
All right, I think that hits most of them here. Bam or Porzingis on FanDuel?
Yeah, that's a great question. With Butler back and everything going on, I have those guys projected about the same. I think Porzingis is likely a little bit less owned. Do you have our FanDuel ownership handy?
I can get it.
I imagine most of the time it's, unless I have Luka, which again is a bit of a get on FanDuel. I think he's 10 grand on the nose. I will probably end up on Porzingis there.
Let's see. Porzingis is not. Am I spelling? Oh, P-O-R-Z. Porzingis is 14. Who was our other guy that you were looking at?
Bam Adebayo.
Adebayo is right below him.
Is he here under him?
Yes.
So
point one.
Well, then it's a good question and one many people would have. I think I would be a little more inclined to play just, you know, sort of playing the mental game of it's unlikely neither Luka nor Porzingis has a decent game against the Cavs. Obviously possible. Could blow them out. Very slow game or on the slow side of a game. So, you know, maybe doesn't get there, but especially if I have some other exposure, you're going to see a lot of Kendrick Nunn on FanDuel. I think that makes sense if you're running Butler. If you had no one of relevance on either team, I would probably play Bam Adebayo in cash and still play Porzingis in GPP. So I just think it's a little more likely that I spike the 50.
Alrighty.
You should open up. You should open up the YouTube, because I've had a number of people who are like, I follow your shows on YouTube. No one ever answers my damn question. And obviously, we try to give deference to the premium Slack chat.
Yeah, I have it open. Miles Leonard. Wait. Well, they asked questions. Oh yeah, no, that's right. Miles Leonard or Bielitsa on DK.
I would be more inclined to play Myers Leonard. I'm sorry, no, actually on DK especially, I'd be more inclined to play Bielitsa. Pardon me. You know, I worry again about the minutes encroachment we've been talking about there. That's really close, but I think I would be, and again, it's enough to do with whether you're stacking game. I haven't projected within a point. But yeah, I think I would slightly rather play Nemanja Bjelica.
Ariza or Knox?
if price is not an issue, I do have Knox projected for, I think, 3 more fantasy points. They're both going to be very nominally owned. So I would rather play Knox matchup and all that concern there. But
favorite punt shooting guard on FanDuel?
You're not giving me... I did mention Buddy Hield, by the way. Kind of like Buddy Hield tonight. Got paid. Going to make a lot of buckets one of these games. Knicks, not very complicated there. I expect Ntilikina to get a good bit of time on Fox. That opens him up a little bit more. So I like Buddy Hield. He hadn't gotten a mention yet. Favorite punt shooting guard on FanDuel. We've got nobody. You can't make me say Alonzo Trier. Duncan Robinson has a check mark. Did we get Duncan Robinson starting again? That would shock me, but he's got the check mark on FanDuel. I would probably, if he counts as a punt for you, certainly Jordan Clarkson at 4,800. Under Jordan Clarkson, if you don't have that, I would play Danny Green, then Avery Bradley. Danny Green, a little bit more of an upside. Avery Bradley just getting a bucket of minutes at 3,900. Don't really want to play either one. And yeah, Clarkson. Actually, it would be Clarkson, Green, Forbes, Bradley. Forbes will come in between them for me.
Yes, Duncan Clarkson is starting, it looks like.
Duncan Clarkson? Who's that?
Who did you say? I've got too many windows open. And
Duncan Robinson, who started
Duncan
the last
Robinson,
game for the Heat, and I didn't expect to start today.
Okay, well, I'm trying to read the Spanish, but it says Duncan Robinson. So,
is it an old tweet?
No, it's from 14 minutes ago.
Tonight's starters. None. Robinson is starting. None. Robinson, Butler, Adebayo, and Leonard are starting 41 minutes ago. So we were a little slow on picking up this news. I don't know how I missed it. Jones Jr. is out. He's the only relevant inactive. Yeah, I really don't want Robinson at this point. So he's starting, but I really worry about how the minutes get loaded out there. But in cash, it's probably Duncan Robinson now.
Hield or Barrett on FanDuel?
All else being equal, I will still play RJ Barrett. Close, but I still have to play Barrett there.
Capella or Thompson on DK?
Thompson.
Portis or Holmes, no site given?
It's DK. Well, it's not FanDuel, I should put it that way. Portis.
Hero or the ever-tragic Goran Dragic?
I mean, Robinson is still getting the start, so now he's got to trade there, and God forbid Waiters comes in. I'll take Hero.
All right, 3v3 here. This is FanDuel. Knox, Bielitsa. Did I say it right that time? Bielitsa?
That was close. Bielitsa,
Portis, DFS, PJ Tucker, Dwight Powell.
The former, certainly, if Maxi Kleber is playing. And even if he isn't, I'll take the first one regardless, but by a mile if Maxi Kleber isn't, because you're losing 11 minutes off your other squad.
Nunn or RJ Barrett?
I'll take Barrett.
Boban or Frankie Smokes?
Yeah, there's a question. Bravo for brave foreigners in our strange land. Right now, I would still play Frankie Smokes. I can't get behind it. If Kleber is out, I think that's a very cute pivot. Please put it in your utility spot and let's go Boban. I would rather play $3,200 Dorian Finney-Smith. I would rather play a lot of other guys, and you need Kleber out, certainly for Boban, and would certainly help for Dorian Finney-Smith. But I got to go with Frankie.
Tristan Thompson or Rudy Gobert? I never thought we'd be comparing the two of them.
Rudy Gobert, not close.
Right.
I am projected for 7 fantasy points more.
Can you play JaMychal Green on FanDuel?
You can. Had a good game against and I ranked him, had a good game against the Jazz just a couple games ago, but that again was the game Kawhi Leonard said, and that bumped his minutes from what now I would put it about 19 to, he played 27 in that game, ever take a minute. So can you play him? Sure. I imagine there are guys I would prefer.
How do you feel about Danny Green being familiar with the shooting backdrop in San Antonio tonight?
I knew that question was coming. I won't pretend to have a strong take on this, but can't hurt. You know what I'm saying? It's not like having shot in the gym 16 million times is going to, it can't hurt. So sure. We already saw the 150 fantasy point Danny Green game, or 40, I think it was, but I don't expect to see that very frequently. And again, you have Kuzma back, which is going to take a little bit of a cookie off a lot of guys here, but you go on with your bad self. But it's cute. I like the question.
All right, this will be the last one. Ariza or Bradley DK? Cash.
Oh, Bradley. That was easy. I mean, you said Cash. It was close before that. Yeah, Cash is Brattles. Little Brattles. Although I will tell you, after yesterday,
would you go Gordon or DFS, hoping that Kleber is out on FanDuel? They already have Harden. I'm typing.
If you just have Harden, I would still play Gordon.
All right. There we go. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to do that.
No, that's fine. I was saying that after yesterday, I have a little bit of aversion to guys with Bradley in their name. Yeah.
Someone's asking if Grayson Allen's playing tonight. He doesn't play for Utah anymore.
Yep, he's on Memphis, and so no. Although he's also injured. I'm trying to remember the extent of his thing, but he's not terribly relevant at this point. He's settling into an 11-minute role anyway. But
all right. Shout out there, Fantasy Draft Rake free DFS. Again, it's a fantastic deal. We've sung their praises, as Eddie mentioned. Basically, if you were to deposit every single time you needed to put in entry fees, it would cost you less than 4%. Every time you play a game on DraftKings or FanDuel, it costs you between 12 and 15.9%. Which is
10 and 15.9%.
Well, tournaments.
Oh, tournaments, yeah. You said whenever you play a game.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
Okay.
Well, most people don't play cash. You know what?
No, I just don't want to
start playing cash on Fantasy Draft, which I did today for NFL, because I thought, you know what? If I beat half the field, I win. And there's no rake. So before I would have to get, 55% or so, 54% to make it work out, Eddie. I don't now.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep. No. Yep.
All right. We have reached lock. We have the Bradley Beal triple-double answer for you. It was not against Minnesota.
He had 2, I think.
He did. They were about 3 weeks apart. December 22nd.
They were in the winter. Yep.
And January 13th. Both were at home. Both were overtime. He played 54 minutes in one and 55 in the other.
That's right. One was double.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was. But 43, 10, 15, 3-2, and 6 3-pointers. That was against Toronto in January. And then against Phoenix, it was 40, 11, 15, and 4 3-pointers.
But if someone has it up right now, like he averages 6 assists, 5 rebounds or something. So like for him to play, 30 minutes and have 1 and 0 is just like even in the blowout, if he hits his, it happens 1% of the time. We just, randomly, it was the combination of the blowout, which cost him a quarter of his production. That's okay. That's going to happen. But even more rare for him to, he's on a bad team. He's going to get his ass blown out. That's fine. But, the no peripherals thing is just weird. It's just really weird against that team.
Very bizarre. Very bizarre. All right. So for
ownership.
Let me see here. Tomorrow we've got, 1, 2, 3, 6 gamer tomorrow. You do have DFS, NFL live before lock. That is in 90 minutes. That will be the Eric and Eric in the evening show. I can't do the theme song like Chris Spags, but we'll work.
Who's the other Eric? Who's the other Eric?
It's Eric, our Croatian friend that I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try.
We've really hit a theme for today.
Indeed we have. So it's Team Eric. There we are. It's Emac and Eric. So we've got that one. You've, of course, at 9:30 tomorrow, got the DFS NBA strategy show. 11 o'clock, you've got the DFS NFL strategy show. That is going to be Manny Laura and Dave Lochran. We'll have the deep dive at 5 o'clock, live before lock at 6 gamer for tomorrow. So check out what pieces of free content arrive on the spinning wheel, and there will be some fun there tomorrow. Last night it was Eddie's player pool. We'll have to see what it is for Monday. But with that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. You can follow Eddie at Fast Eddie Fear. You can follow me at EMAC DFS.
No ownership. I want to do ownership.
Oh, do you want to? Oh, sorry.
There's two good games. It's just there's the both it's the Heat, the Knicks, the Kings, and the Rockets. This is gonna be a big old chunk of ownership here. I'm kind of intrigued.
Oh yeah, sorry, we forgot. I was remiss.
Well, you've got 7 shows today. You're looking forward to the next 3. I feel for you. Don't get me wrong.
All right, we're going to the excellent 8s on DraftKings. This is the $200,000 contest. I am exporting the CSV now. I can see that I thought Frankie would be. Is that really his? Oh no, that I saw the wrong number. Okay, he's good. All right, so I've got the CSV downloaded. We've got it locked. Who is the most popular player?
It's going to be close, but I think Frankie Smokes will be over Russell Westbrook. But I think Russell Westbrook is massively owned. But I'll say Frankie Smokes.
Eddie, you never ceases to amaze me on this. Frankie Smokes is massively owned at 56%.
That's more than I would have said. I'd have said 50, 55, but okay.
Russell Westbrook, 52.5.
Yeah, that's a big old number. So I'm curious where Harden ends up. It should be still a big number, and you'd like to think it should be like there's going to be some people who have neither, which feels weird, but like 90% should have one or the other. So I'll say 38 on Harden.
32.
Wow. That's nice. I'm pretty excited about 32. Like the guy's now up to shooting 17.5% from 3 on the year. Spoiler, that's not going to hold. So he's still averaging 55 fantasy points. Like anyhow, I feel great if I have that. I would rather have 33% James Harden than 53% or whatever it was Russell Westbrook. I don't even know after that. Rashawn Holmes.
Rashawn Holmes is 5th.
So I'm missing one. Bobby Portis.
Bobby Portis. Oh, you're going to like the Bobby Portis number.
People aren't going to trust that. Yeah.
14.4 for Portis.
Oh my God. I got to change my shorts. That's exciting. There's a big old upside there, kids. We'll leave it at that. It's going to be from the Heat game. There's no way people spent that money on it. It's not Eric Gordon. People are going to be too burnt by that. It's not going to be Jimmy Bob. Kendrick Nunn?
You are correct, sir. 30% for Kendrick Nunn.
30. All right. I'd want less than 30 with sort of the backcourt glut that I'm a little worried about there, but it's obviously a fine play. He's still way too cheap.
All right. Let's hit some daddy likes, yes or no. Marcus Morris, 22.5.
No. I mean, it's fine, but at like 10%. That's no.
Oh, I've got him at 15. Yes.
Yeah, that's 10, 15, but like that's about where he should be. 23%. I mean, it's Marcus Morris, dude can really disappear. Matchup's great. Might work out, but he'd be my 5th favorite Nick. 6th.
RJ Barrett is, let me see, 20.5.
That's fine. That's good. Does a lot. Tons of minutes. I'm fine with that.
14. Julius Randle, I've got 38. The field has 20.
Nice. 20 is about where it should be, but I liked Randall tonight. There's again, he hasn't quite done the monster yet, and he's gonna a couple times, and this is a fine spot for him. So that's about where that should be.
All right, B Jelly at 18. I've got him at 6.
Yeah, I'd want less than 18, I think. There's just a lot of other compelling value. I think the minutes are some degree kept in the mid-20s, but most likely scenario is dude gets 25 minutes against the Knicks at 4K or whatever he costs. So no problem with it. I'd probably want to have a little less.
All right, Myers Leonard at 17. I got him at 11.
Yeah, I think I'd want to be closer to your number. I like Myers Leonard. Again, it's going to be hard for me to be like, that's terrible for anyone in this game, which should be a track meet, but I think I'd want to be a little less on that.
PJ Tucker, 16.5. I only have 6. Didn't get to him tonight.
Isn't he like 4,800?
Yeah, his price has crept up somewhat.
Yeah, he will not continue to shoot 60% from the field.
At some point, Eric Gordon is going to make the shots instead of PJ Tucker.
I mean, you're telling me that he's like $500 less than Bobby Portis and is more owned than him, apparently. I have a lot of trouble getting to that. Like, I understand people wanted a part of this game, but it's not like the Knicks and the Kings are going to, you're going to get one of those crappy games where neither team scores that much. But Portis isn't shy. So, yeah, Tucker, I'd want less than that. There's just a real floor there, and there's just lots of value with higher. Like, I would rather play Harrison Barnes. I would rather play, just other guys who I think can get there. So,
All right,
I'd rather play Daniel House. There's just other guys I'd rather play in those fours.
Justice Winslow, 0.13. Tosh Gibson. Is Tosh Gibson? He should be active, right?
He's active.
He's active. Yogi Ferrell.
Active.
Dennis Smith Jr. is not. That's 0.08.
What's Buddy Hield owned?
Where is
what's De'Aaron Fox owned? Like
Budrick. Fox is 4.5. Hield is dyslexic. Fox is 5.4. Hield is 5.9.
Yeah, I love Hield especially, but even Fox should be higher on than that. So those are fun. What's Eric Gordon owned? We hadn't hit Eric Gordon yet. I figured he was starting and boost him up to 15, 20.
12.5.
Okay. Well, people have been kicked in the balls by him a few days in a row. So
Maxi Kleber is out, by the way.
See, look at that. Right after lock. Right on time there. So, yeah, you can now play Boban. I literally like Dorian Finney-Smith as a pivot to some of the other chalkier value. And your Dwight Powell shares are good. Good. You can feel free to run all your Dwight Powell. He's now just great. You should be very happy if you have your Dwight Powell. He should get, I'd project him for 24 now. So,
all right, gamers, with that, we are going to get on out of here. Wrapping up officially this time. You can follow Eddie at Fast Eddie Fear on Twitter. I'm at EMACDFS. And of course, it is Osmo_COM. 80 minutes, and then we are going to do the NFL Live Before Lock, so tune in 7:30, check that out. We do have the free article in front of the paywall up on the homepage. You can read that breakdown of New England at Baltimore. By the way, Ben Rossa thinks it's going to be a Baltimore upset tonight. With that, gamers, good luck.